Today, I wanted to do a roundup of tips I think every Southwest traveler needs to know. Every airline has its idiosyncrasies, but Southwest seems to have more than average. These tips will save you time and money and make sure you're using all of your credit card benefits to their fullest. Welcome back to Points for Normal People. I'm Katie, and I believe travel isn't just for the rich. I'm here to share easy-to-follow tips to help you supercharge your travel points so you can pay for entire vacations every year. I'm rounding out a mini-series today on Southwest, which was the beginning of Season 2 of this podcast. We've already covered how to earn a Southwest Companion Pass, which is my favorite deal in award travel. I love it not just because it's a great deal, because it also puts my domestic flight decisions on autopilot, so it saves me time and brain power. Last episode, I covered my step-by-step process for getting the cheapest prices on Southwest flights. Today we'll talk about some other Southwest tips. Now, the first thing I want to cover is what to do if your Southwest flight is delayed. There are different strategies I use for a shorter delay and a longer delay. For a delay under an hour, there's not much you can do. If you're lucky, you're at an airport that has a lounge that you can be relaxing in. For shorter delays, be sure to be at the airport on time anyway. That goes for all airlines. Well, normally I find short delays seem to get worse and worse. Sometimes airlines can partially recover and a delay time can drop. If your flight is delayed by an hour or more, you've unlocked a new power. At that mark, you can typically change your Southwest flight for free to any other flight if there is space to do so. I've had the best luck in calling to do this. If you're at an airport, you could also ask an agent to see if they can do it in person. This is best when your specific flight is delayed, but not because the airport is experiencing some bad weather situation that's causing every flight to be delayed. Because if the airport is full of delayed flights, there often isn't much wiggle room. The last time we did this, we were in Denver coming home from visiting family. I logged on the morning of our flight and at 8 a.m. was already seeing a 60-minute delay for a 4 p.m. flight. In my experience, that's a really bad sign, and the delays often continue to just keep going up throughout the day. So I hopped on the phone to Southwest customer service to try to make a free change. I had booked the lowest fare class, Wanna Get Away. While I was waiting on hold, I was also looking up other flights between Denver and Chicago for that day and testing for space by pretending to make a booking for 4 people on any of those flights. By the time the agent answered my call, I was able to give them the exact flight we wanted to change to, and they were able to switch us for free to an earlier flight that didn't have a delay. I know some of you hate hopping on the phone, but I promise the Southwest agents are so helpful. In any flight delay situation or flight cancellation, it's really important that you're doing your own research. You should be looking up flights on the airline website while you're waiting to talk to an agent. You should be plugging in the number of people you have to see if it's showing space on other flights. You should then be telling the agent what flight you want to change to, not asking them what's available. It makes the process go a lot quicker and also gives you more control over your new flight times. In our case, we actually left earlier than our original flight, and this was possible because our schedule was flexible that day, so we were able to just head to the airport a little bit earlier. Now, there won't always be a way to switch to another flight, but sometimes there also might be a different connection you can take or even a nonstop you can take instead of a flight with a layover. But you have to be proactive in that situation. With Southwest's current boarding policy, this does mean that you'll likely be in the higher C boarding group and getting a middle seat on the new flight, unless you can use family boarding. But usually, we'd rather take a middle seat and get somewhere earlier knowing we're getting there, especially if there's a long delay on a different flight. If you end up with a delay that's longer with 3 hours, and the delay was in Southwest's control, you are also entitled to at least $75 of compensation in the form of a voucher. This $75 compensation was mandated by the Department of Transportation as part of the mitigation for the 2022 Southwest operational meltdown. There's a little bit of irony because before this mandate, Southwest actually had a much more generous informal policy that has now been dropped. It used to be that if you had a delay for any reason of an hour or more, you could send a message to Southwest's customer service and complain, and they would issue you a love voucher as their way of saying sorry. Sometimes these love vouchers would be up to $150 per person, and they were often given for shorter 1 to 2 hour delays and even sometimes for weather delays. Now, instead, reports indicate that the agents are pretty restrictive and you have to submit your request through a certain form. It's still important to know about for the cases when you do have a 3-hour or more delay, but it's certainly not as generous as it was last year. If you end up with a love voucher, you'll need to know a few tricks to using them. A love voucher is basically a flight voucher that Southwest issues to say, sorry, we messed up. You can get them for reasons besides just delayed flights. These will be issued in someone's name, the name of the person who had the issue, but they can be used to book a flight for anyone. They will also be issued with an expiration date of a year and must be used before then. They also can't be used to cover taxes and fees for air travel. But there's a little loophole here that is helpful to note. While Southwest Love Vouchers have those restrictions of expiring within a year and not being able to be used for taxes and fees, Southwest flight credits never expire, and Southwest flight credits can be used to pay taxes and fees. So all you need to do is convert your love voucher into a flight credit, which is actually very easy to do. To do that, you'll just go to southwest.com and look for any flight that costs a little bit more than your love voucher is worth. You're going to go ahead and book the flight and use your love voucher for payment and put any remainder onto a credit card. Don't worry, you'll be getting a refund for your credit card payment. The minute you get the confirmation email, you're going to go back into your account on southwest.com and click to cancel that reservation that you just made. Because it's within 24 hours of booking, you'll automatically get the option to get a cash refund for whatever amount was on your credit card. It's important to make sure you've selected this option to get a refund back to your credit card. Whatever amount was a love voucher cannot be given as a refund to your credit card or as a love voucher, so it will actually be given back to you as a travel credit. And remember, those travel credits never expire, and travel credits can be used to pay for taxes and fees. Now, it used to be a pain to keep track of travel credits, but now Southwest saves any that are associated with your Rapid Rewards number to your account. And you can find them really easily by going to the payment area if you're logged into a computer. That travel credit, as it stands, will only be redeemable for one person. Travel credits are tied to the person who the original flight was booked for. But we have another loophole here. If you have a travel credit, and you want to use it for someone else, you can now do that by jumping through a few quick steps. I know podcasts aren't the most ideal way to learn some of these tips that are ultimately things that have to be done from a computer, but I like to walk through the basic steps so that at least you have a little bit of a frame of reference for it. I do have blog posts with screenshots that I will link in the show notes that also show these processes. Learning how to use a travel credit for anyone is useful in the Southwest ecosystem because a lot of people end up with flight credits. All you need to do is look for a flight that costs a little bit more than your travel credit. Then you need to book the Wanna Getaway Plus fare. This is a slightly higher fare category that comes with 2 great perks. Some people book this all the time for these perks. The perks are, first of all, to be able to change your flight on the day of travel to any other flight between your departure and destination cities, as long as there is availability. And the second perk is that when you cancel a Wanna Getaway Plus fare, you are allowed to transfer your flight credit to someone else's name. So let's say I have a $100 flight credit in my name, but really I want to use it to book a flight for my daughter. I would first look for a flight that costs more than $100 at southwest.com. When I find one, I would book it for myself and use my voucher to pay. But importantly, I would book the Wanna Getaway Plus fare. Then I would immediately turn around and cancel my Wanna Getaway Plus flight. At that point, the flight credit will now show you that you have the ability to transfer it one time into someone else's name. I would transfer it into my daughter's name and then book the flight I actually want for her. Using those tricks to book and rebook flights just helps you have more flexibility with your love vouchers and flight credits. If you've been paying attention to travel news, you may have seen that Southwest is going to be changing up its boarding and seating process. These changes are slated to actually take effect in 2026, and we honestly don't have a lot of information on them yet. Southwest has said that they will seat you by your companion. They have said they will be assigning seats, and they have said they will be adding more legroom to some seats. It's still unclear how these changes will be implemented and how they will affect families in particular. But at least for the next year, the boarding and seating processes will remain as they are. If you've never flown Southwest, you just need to know that Southwest doesn't assign seats and instead assigns a boarding order. People get divided into A, B, and C groups, and each group has up to 60 people in the group, and your ticket is numbered like A1, A2, etc. The earlier you get on the plane, the better chance you have of picking a seat you want. Now, if you travel with a kid that's 6 or under, the good news is that you really don't have to worry about this at all. That's because you'll get to board with family boarding, which is between the A and the B boarding groups. So you'll always get to sit together. But for everyone else, under current policies, it's important to understand upgraded boarding and early bird check-in. It's especially important to understand because if you hold any Southwest card, you have these benefits, and you want to make sure that you're using them. The exact benefits you have will vary based on the card that you have. But currently, every Southwest card offers either 2 early bird check-ins per year or 4 upgraded boardings per year. In a different episode, we talked about how some benefits are per card member year and some are per calendar year. These benefits are tied to the card member year. That means if you open your card on November 1st, you have 4 upgraded boardings to use over the next 12 months. When you pay your annual fee next November, your benefits will reset and you'll get 4 more. Even if you don't have the credit card benefits for these, you can still pay for these benefits too. Let's start with early bird check-in. Early bird check-in is priced on a sliding scale between $15 and $99 each way. The price doesn't always make sense to me. I just checked on one of my Costa Rica flights, and it would cost $50 for us to add early bird check-in to a multi-leg trip. But on a trip I have to Baltimore for a flight that's less than 2 hours, it's $60. So I think ultimately it's really based on supply and demand. With early bird check-in, you will be checked in automatically for your flight 36 hours before departure and automatically assigned a boarding position. It pretty much ensures that you'll get a B boarding group and sometimes an A boarding group, which means you'll get decent seats on your flight. The earlier you add early bird check-in to your flight, the earlier it checks you in for that flight. So if you add early bird check-in to your ticket just a few days before you leave, you'll get a worse boarding position than if you had added it months before. There are a few downsides to adding it right when you book your ticket though. The first is that if you end up canceling your flight, you don't get any refund for the early bird check-in. So you don't want to add it unless you're very sure that you're taking the flight. And then if you add it when you're booking your flight, you need to add it for everyone on your reservation. Now, you might want to add it for everyone on your reservation, so that might be fine. But if you only really want to add it for one person, you can't do that when you're first booking your flight. You can add early bird check-in for just one person if you add it later on. The way that the credit card benefit works is that you pay for early bird check-in with your Southwest credit card that has this benefit, and then you'll get a statement credit for that same amount credited back to you. So you can use that benefit for yourself or anyone else, really. You just need to pay for early bird check-in with your credit card. You technically shouldn't need to get it for yourself and your companion. That's because a companion should automatically be assigned a sequential boarding number to you whenever you check in. In practice, this works almost all of the time, but we have had a few glitches. Not even just with the early bird check-in, but just in general. Very rarely, but it does happen, our daughter has ended up with a way different and later boarding number than the rest of our family. If that happens, the easiest thing to do is have the first person just go on and save a seat, which technically Southwest does not have a policy against. If you're going to save up this benefit, I think it's best to use early bird check-in credits for longer flights, for flights with multiple legs, and when you're traveling at holidays. That helps you have a better chance for a better seat when you really need it. Upgraded boarding also helps you get a better boarding position, but works differently. You have to use upgraded boarding closer in. In fact, this credit card benefit has to be used within 24 hours of departure. But upgraded boarding has to be purchased for each leg of a flight separately. If I have a flight from Chicago to Houston and then continuing on to Costa Rica, and I get early bird check-in, which we just talked about, it's going to cover all of my flights for that day. But upgraded boarding is per flight. So I have to pick if I'm getting it from Chicago to Houston or from Houston to Costa Rica. The boarding position you'll get with upgraded boarding, though, is better than it is with early bird check-in. When you use upgraded boarding, it gives you an A1 through 15 boarding spot, but it's limited. If 15 people have already bought it, you won't be able to buy it. So you can't always count on it being available. Still, it's a nice perk when it is. With upgraded boarding, it won't help your companion board earlier. You can't bring your companion along with you unless you're buying upgraded boarding for their ticket as well. If you have the credit card benefit, you'll do the same as with early bird check-in. You'll just pay for your upgraded boarding, and then you're going to get a statement credit for it later on. And then don't forget to be at boarding right on time so you can get on the plane with the A group and pick a great seat. I like using this benefit when we've totally missed checking in at the 24-hour mark. Like earlier this year, we were in Mexico and coming home. We were at a rural cenote with no internet access, no data access when we were supposed to check into our flight. So we ended up with pretty high number C boarding group. When I finally got back and had data service, I was able to use my upgraded boarding credits for all 4 of us, so we all could get on in A1 through 15. Unfortunately, there's not an automated way to track how many of these credits you've used this year on your card. There used to be a tracker on Chase's site, but it seems to have disappeared. Once Southwest switches to assigned seating, these benefits will obviously change. As of now, Southwest is saying they will be replaced with a comparable benefit. So we'll see what that is later in 2025. There are a few more credit card benefits I want to touch on. One is that if you have the personal Southwest card with the $149 annual fee, you also get a $75 credit each year for southwest.com. You can use this when purchasing a flight, you can use it to pay for your Southwest airfare taxes, or you can use it to buy additional upgraded boardings, or you can even just buy a Southwest gift card with it. Just make sure you use it. If you have the business card with the $199 annual fee, you get free Wi-Fi on Southwest flights. You essentially get 365 Wi-Fi credits each year. You'll just pay for your Wi-Fi with your credit card and it will be reimbursed to you as a statement credit. So you can buy Wi-Fi on the same day for multiple devices. That card also offers a credit for TSA PreCheck or global entry every 4 years. You likely won't keep your card for 4 years, so make sure you use your benefit before you cancel. You could also pay for someone else's global entry fee if you don't need it yourself. And then last are the anniversary bonus points. I mentioned this in the episode on closing cards for max value, but we'll review here. Each of these Southwest cards offers some amount of bonus points every year on your account anniversary. So once you've had the card a year, you'll be charged another annual fee. Within a few days of that, you'll also see anniversary points posting to your Southwest account. If you're planning to cancel your card, you can wait until those points post before you cancel. That's because even after you pay an annual fee, you still have 30 days to cancel a card and receive a full refund of your fee. I wanted to mention one more Southwest tip before ending the episode. Now, this tip isn't currently active, but it's worth mentioning just so you have a frame of reference in case it pops up again. In 2022 and 2023, Frontier offered a status match for people that had airline status from other airlines, and that included people with a Southwest Companion Pass. You had to pay for the status match, but it was $99, I think, and for that, you got a level of Frontier status that made it a lot more pleasant to fly Frontier. You got perks like free checked bags and free carry-ons and free assigned seats. And I've talked to people who live in a market that has a lot of Frontier flights, and this status match worked out really well for them. They could take advantage of booking some of those really cheap $29 Frontier fares, but still getting the perks as if they had booked much higher priced fares. Like I said, it's not currently available, but if it comes back, I will certainly have it called out in our weekly newsletter. For a quick action step today, I want you to review the benefits you have on your Southwest cards, if you have any Southwest cards, that is. There are 5 different cards, so I don't want to just list out all the benefits here. But if you Google your card name, you'll easily be able to find a list. I will also link our guide to these cards in the show notes, which lists out the differences in the cards. Double check if you have early bird check-in or upgraded boarding in particular, so you know which one you have, and start thinking about how you might use it. If you're just tuning into the podcast and are newish to Points, I highly suggest going back and starting at Season 1, Episode 1 to give you the absolute best foundation for your credit card points. Season 1 is your foundation. I just read a very nice review I got last week, which said this. I started travel hacking a few months ago. I love learning via podcasts, so I started looking around for a good one to get me up and running. For the first few weeks, I was so frustrated with every podcast I tried. Some of them were completely unintelligible for beginners, with tons of terms being thrown around that were never explained. Others were more simple but still disorganized and included a bunch of annoying fluff to wade through. I'm not interested in listening to an hour-long blow-by-blow of your last luxury vacation. I just want to learn how to earn my own free vacation. Finally, I happened on Katie's podcast, and it has been a game changer. She is super organized and methodical in the way she presents information. She takes you from square one to square 10 in about 20 minutes, breaking everything down and making it seem so doable. I also love the action steps she includes at the end of each episode. Hers is the only podcast that feels like it is built to teach, not just built to make money. I wish I had started with travel points 10 years ago, but the upside to waiting so long is that I now have this great resource to guide me and the confidence to know that I'm doing it right. Thanks, Katie. Thank you so much for that kind podcast review, and I really appreciate it when you leave reviews because it helps more people find the podcast, but it also just helps me know that I'm on the right track here because a podcast, you're kind of sending information out into the void, and you don't always get feedback on it. If you're new and if you start at Season 1, Episode 1, it's really the best way to learn. My goal was to really teach this information well, and reviews like this give me hope that I'm doing that. Thanks so much for being with me today, and I can't wait to see you next time where we will continue to unlock these secrets of travel points together.